Hello again, this is Charlie Belfontaine, and you're listening to the Home Buyers Hour on WCPT AM 820. We're the Facts Matter, and I got in the studio, we got all our heroes today. Crying out loud, let alone somebody else's
Goes
name.
with the age.
So we're going to talk a lot about real estate, but first I want these gentlemen to introduce themselves. Steve, please start.
Sure, I'm Steve Davis.
Nice.
I'm with Real Brokerage. I'm your residential pro. You can reach me at 312-513-6314. And you can find me on Instagram, which I'm Steve Davis. Over to you, Patrick.
You want me to do my best Steve Davis impersonation?
Ooh,
No, I do not.
All right, it goes something like this. So anytime
You do
you
have to
hear,
bang things.
yeah, anytime you hear a
Or
and then-
thumps.
Oh, do I?
yeah.
Well, how come you guys never told me that? I didn't
because
know.
We're telling you now.
Yeah, I want to make sure there's a nice, an established record of you being an unprofessional broadcaster before I, really give you a hard time.
The professional.
the very mature, very
Well-educated.
Imagine. But I'll tell you what, as a brand new spokesperson for Portillo's breakfast,
Oh, that was hilarious.
I will say that it's delicious. I'm not being paid for that yet. Portillo's, get
Let's talk.
Get in my DMs. We'll do some. But I'm actually, my professional career is real estate lawyer. So if you're buying or selling a home, get me involved if you want things to go smoothly.
Sounds good.
Find me on social media, Loftus_law. Loft on Instagram, Loftus Law on TikTok. Look at my shorts on YouTube, and find me on Portillo's.
I love it. My name is Charlie Belfontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. As arrogant as it sounds, we do have the highest and probably the best reputation on home inspection companies in the entire Chicagoland area. So if you're looking at buying a house, I hope you think about us, and I saved the best for last. Joey, please.
Why, hello, Joey Matthews, NMLS 1230694, the VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at theVALoanNerd.com across all the social medias. That's at the VA Loan Nerd. You can call or text me at 630-235-2405. Notice there was no pause. That was nice. I appreciate that.
We do what we can.
So you remembered my last name and everything.
I did. One T. I know it very well.
Good.
So last week, and we recorded on Wednesdays. And I know this airs on Saturdays. But last week, I was kind of nervous and I was panicking. I was worried about all these tariffs. I figured that if we start dumping 25% on people, that's going to increase their expenses, and I think that was going to hurt the real estate market. So I was all ready to tighten the belt and go back down. And then right after we left the recording, I get news that all of those things were postponed. What does all that mean? What's happening over this last week, Joey, that is affecting the real estate market?
Volatility over the tariffs. I mean, it's straight up just fear trading at its finest. So we have a recession that we're in. I mean, we're in a recession. We are also looking at a loosening job market. We're looking at the Fed having to cut rates to support people affording more, buying more. But combined with a recession, that leads to, I think the big concern is a stagflationary period, which is no one's a fan of. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at.
What's
I need to know more definitions as well, Pat.
Give me stagflation in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
It's a fun one.
We gave you time. Google it. Come on.
I did. I immediately did because I'm not going to be able to answer it as well as Google will. But it's just it's sticky inflation combined with slow economic growth. So it's inflation along with a recession, same time, right?
Right.
Those two things.
Inflation, but no wage growth and no jobs.
Correct.
So
Correct.
study the 70s.
So inflation, and
a recession.
All right, what's the definition of a recession?
2 quarters of negative growth in the economy.
And that has
GDP.
happened?
Well, I don't think it is official just yet.
It's unreported, yeah.
But
Once
you
they
don't
report
know
it,
you're in a
next
recession. You don't know you're in a recession until after you are in a recession, because you can't record those 2 quarters of negative GDP growth until after those 2 quarters have happened. So what Joey, correct me if I am misstating, you're suggesting that we are within either the first or second. Well, it would have to be the second quarter of
It would be the
negative
second.
growth.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Well, we are in Q2, so that's this quarter. Are we talking about Q4 last year?
Joey,
No,
No.
It's going to be Q1 and Q2.
Q1 and Q2. All right.
Yeah, we just won't have it announced until the end of July, beginning of August, because that's when the next quarter ends.
So I've seen posts on real estate agent websites and Facebook stuff, and yes, I get criticized for being an old man on Facebook. It is what it is, and they were talking about the interest rates dropping, because of what's happening in the economy right now. I don't know if that was just propaganda or marketing or what should we be, I don't know, planning for, I guess is the right word.
The Fed funds rate, they're going to cut rates. They're going to. With how slow the economy is moving, they're going to have to, right? And that comes along with a recession. That's how that works. And part of Trump's campaign promises is, we're going to drop the Fed funds rate. How do you drop the Fed? How do you guarantee you drop the Fed funds rate? Is you take a huge monster steaming dump on the economy, which I would argue that this tariff stuff is kind of doing. But it's also going to, again, lead to higher prices. So you're going to have higher prices, lower employment, lower wages. It's not going to be pretty. So yeah, our rates going to come down, not necessarily because you're combining higher inflation. Fed funds rate, they're going to have to cut rates to combat a recession, but it's not going to do anything for price increases.
well, you tell Kramer in the background there that he needs to, get something right. And Joey, I'm glad you kind of were steering in that direction, because that was going to be a question I was going to ask. If, from what I understand, expectations of inflation are sky high at the moment, and believe it or not, expectations of inflation have a significant effect on whether we actually get inflation. And when people expect higher prices, guess what? You get higher prices, because the people who are selling things, they go, "Ooh, if you're expecting me to raise my prices, I'm going to raise my prices because margins and business and shareholders." So given that, if we do start to see a spike in inflation, even with a softer economy, how are they going to justify cutting rates? I mean, last time we had stagflation, that's where you had interest rates near 20.
Yeah, neat. I got nothing for you, dude. I got nothing for you, dude.
Cool.
I've never lived in a stagflationary period. I'm not Jimmy Carter. I don't know how this all works out in the long run. That's it's not easy, but yeah, eventually to combat, you have to raise rates. You just do, right? It's gonna suck.
Paul Volcker would tell you that that's the way to go, and that was extremely painful. Charlie, when you were a mid-30s man in the early 80s, what was it like to have extremely high interest rates? It's probably not that great.
I'm older than that, actually. I was in my mid-20s in the 80s. I'm so sorry. But it was very high, and I didn't know better. I didn't know anything else. So to me, that was normal, all right? And I think that's an important thing to understand is, what is considered normal. And societies are different in different parts. But for me, having a 19, 18% interest is what it was. It was way up there. That was what was normal at that point in time. So I wasn't alerted out. That was a first-time home buyer. I didn't know anything else. And when I bought that house, that was actually in 1991 is when that was. And I think it was right after about 2 or 3 years of house prices dropping. I was looking at a chart, and it seemed like there were just 2 or 3 sections in the last 20, 30 years where house prices actually went down. It went up every other year, but like 7 to 10, they were dropped for a while. And then the late 80s, they dropped for a while as well. But that's what's more important to me is I actually want to hear more from Steve, because I'm looking at you as a managing partner of a very large, successful real estate firm, in Evanston. And you do have quite a few agents that you need to worry about, and their families and their incomes that come in there. What are you doing as far as this to? I mean, I know you can't control the market and stuff like that, but you always have to be able to react to it. So, what's your thought process on this?
I mean, the biggest thing is that when it comes down to the agents, you have some agents that are working extremely hard, and you're seeing the production. They're seeing their production.
What is working hard? What does that
Well,
entail?
it means that you show up. It means that you make the phone calls. It means that you put in the effort. There's a lot of agents out there that don't do anything, and then they're like, "Well, how come I'm not getting any business? How come I'm not making any money?" It also depends on their situation. If they're, if they have bills to pay or they don't have bills to pay. There are some people,
How
some of
hungry
the,
they are.
there are some of the agents that are, unfortunately, however you look at it, are able to be taken care of by their families. And there's other agents that are on their own now and realize they have to make money or they don't eat, or they don't live or whatever, right? So as far as what we do in regard to kind of pushing them and trying to make them better and really giving them the tools to make sure they get there is, first of all, we're very much an organization that it's a lot of camaraderie. So we all help each other.
I hear that in the profession, not just your organization.
Yeah.
But I hear a lot of
It's not
cooperating.
necessarily true.
Whoa.
No, it all depends. There's certain companies, certain agents out there that care about people, and there's certain agents out there that care about themselves and care about their pocketbook, and that's all that matters, which reflects their business or can, right? I think some of them, it should reflect their business a whole lot more than it does, unfortunately. But for whatever reason, there's shtick
sound
that
like
they
Patrick.
give the seller or the buyer, they believe it, and then it is what it is. So for us, though, let's get back to that and why it's important when it comes to the team aspect is that we help each other. So we are always continuously trying to educate, especially the agents that have not done this for a long time, or especially the agents that need some assistance. It's one of those. The biggest thing about being on a team is just, like I said, the camaraderie of it. It's the fact of helping each other. It's the fact of making sure that you don't fall short. However, there's only a certain amount that you can do as a managing broker, or a manager or broker, or however you want to put it, a partner, to these agents, because some of these agents, they're not getting it. So for us, we're always trying to educate them. We're always trying to bring value to them so they can bring value to their clients. Keeping their enthusiasm, their emotion down, and their excitement up is not the easiest thing in the world. And you constantly, as a partner, you always have to be aware of that and know that it's not it's really important to keep them understanding that, keep pushing yourself. No, it's a numbers game. No, it will happen.
It is a numbers
I'm a
game.
perfect example of that because I put 6 offers in the last 2 weeks. One of them got accepted. The other 5 have not. And the thing is, these clients rely on you, just like the agents rely on us, to make sure that they stay in a positive note. They stay in an excited way of being, instead of depressed, frustrated, feeling like it's never going to happen, so on. It's hard, though. It really is. I mean, from my perspective, from a buyer perspective, maybe even from a seller perspective, if they don't understand what you're trying to do for them as their agent. In this market, we talked about the rates going lower, waiting for that to happen. But more importantly is with the rates going lower, the prices are still going up. People are still paying way too much for the properties. And unfortunately, that's the case. I mean, I had a conversation with a client the other day. They're like, so do I just have to pay 50 over to get a property? And the answer is no, not necessarily, but maybe. I mean, it's crazy. And so going back to your question, like, how do you empower people and how do you keep people moving and being excited about doing what they do and who they're helping and so on? It's just about making them understand, like, if you keep pushing yourself, it's going to happen. It may not be the instant gratification you need right away, but it will happen. So that's the biggest thing with us.
And and I'm kind of in the same boat. We just put on our 15th 1.5 inspector that we're putting out here.
Wow.
It is a wow. And it was only like 2018 is when we decided to build this thing. So over 9 years, we grew that much. And, for those who don't know me all that well, I am a realtorist. All right. And yes, that is a prejudicial remark. I am very prejudiced against real estate agents. Most of the ones I meet, they don't care as much about their clients as I do. And that's why I value all three of you here, because I know that you guys give the extra spot. So we market direct to the consumer, and that was the biggest thing. We were having a conversation earlier today. Steve actually got marketed by another home inspection company, and I kind of stopped Steve a little bit, and I was going after, what are they promising you? They're promising you speed, limited what they're going to document in the reports so they don't create headaches or become that deal killer, stuff like that, and cheap prices, is what they're going after. And that doesn't really benefit the client so much. And in fact, before I walked into the studio today, I was responding, and I do a lot of coaching to other home inspectors across the nation. And I was responding to somebody else saying that, I got asked to donate a gift for an auction in a real estate association, and I want to give them a free home inspection, as far as something to give away. And, my response, I said, okay. And he wanted to know if he should do it. My response was, I tell you what, you answer these 3 questions, and then I'll answer yours. And it was coming back with, how many referrals do you get from that group per se? If you're not getting anything, I can't tell you to go ahead and give something away. 2, what do you think about somebody that is going to refer any professional to their client based on somebody donating a gift to some sort of an association or anything else like that for a thing? And same thing, you get home inspectors that are going into these open houses trying to build relationships with the real estate agents, and they're giving them little goodie bags or candies and everything else. And I'm like, what do you think of your client if you're going to refer my business based on me giving you, some M&Ms and that? You don't think much of your client, which makes me not think much of you as a real estate agent when it comes to that. To me, it's value that comes into place. And now I'm all triggered. I had too much coffee, and everybody's going to make fun of me.
Is it
Doesn't take
regular or
coffee.
peanut M&Ms?
I was going to say,
Different.
I'd say peanut. Is it?
Oh,
Is it
but peanut
butter?
allergies. I'd be
Peanut
careful
butter.
with that. I'm gonna go with the regular ones because if they got kids at home with peanut allergies, so you're saying I just need to give away more M&Ms and I'll be
Most definitely not. I'm saying that.
oh jeez.
Now you're talking about the other trigger,
Rolos.
Preston. That's his thing.
Rolos might get me.
Rolos?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my gosh, Joey, help me out here, please. You look at Patrick's information, and all you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Patrick is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to the law, and he's not going to mince words. He's going to educate his clients so they make good decisions. Joey, he's a T-crosser, I-dotter, and he makes sure, it's true, he makes sure that there's not going to be a
said
headache
dot.
from the underwords. I did say dot.
I mean,
Dateur.
Dateur. And same thing with you, Steve. You go overboard on educating your clients. You don't make decisions for them. You let them know what it's going to be, the good and the bad, and you help them make a good decision. That is valuable to
If
me.
you don't preempt them and you don't give them the facts, because the facts matter, it's
You're making
the
fun
deal
of me.
is that they'll
I don't
never
like any
know,
of you.
and who are they going to trust? This is as exciting of this is to buy a house, to sell a house. You need to be educated. There's 3 things in this world that you do that are the most important, and one of them is buying a house. So if you don't have the backing, the education, the know-how, how are you gonna make a good decision?
So,
I'm counting down from when Charlie tried to bring Joey into the equation,
I know.
and then just absolutely
Sorry, Joey.
trampled him without even.
Speaking of that.
Joey, I have and you know what? Actually, that's how that went.
You did. You heard the background, and it sounded like he's in a trampoline park
He's
or
like,
whatever it is.
how do I?
And then-
He's like, how do I slide in there?
His iPad.
There's just no way to slide in. Charlie was
No.
like steamrolling down the tracks.
I apologize, Joey. You know,
You
but
should.
I do want to hear, like when you build relationships with real estate agents, I'm assuming that they want to refer you because there's no headaches, there's no mistakes, there's no problems. Problems is the right word. There's no problems that happen with the transaction. Once they get from point A, they know they got to get to the Z, and they want to make sure that there's no headaches that come in there. I think that's valuable. Am I
I
right?
call them surprises. No one likes surprises.
Surprises.
The only time we ever have surprises is going to be appraisal related. I have no control over that. So that's the only time any surprise may ever happen is when an appraisal comes in low. That's it.
Well,
do wanna-
and let me
Go ahead.
let me point out that the agents, they kind of do what they can to help mitigate the risk there as well. I mean, Steve, when you've got a listing and the appraisal is scheduled, you'll meet the appraiser out there and give them what you think are reasonable comparable properties, so that they're not just like picking what could seem at random sometimes.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because nowadays what's happening is some appraisers, they don't want anything. They just want the access because some of them feel like you're telling them how to do their job, or you're giving them evidence of why they should do something. I give an example. I had an appraisal yesterday. I went to the appraisal. I said, hey, I've got a package for you. I'm going to send it to you. I just need your email address, because I put it all together and everything else. I always do that so I can help them understand where I'm coming up with the value, and of course where they're coming up with the value. And he said to me, he goes, no, we're good, because this market is what it is and it doesn't matter, and I'm sure it'll be fine. So I'm like, okay, well,
I hate that.
well, I mean, here's the thing, Joey, is that, that's fine. You say that and so on, but then am I to assume? Because assuming is not the way to go. I told my clients, they're like, how'd it go? I'm like, I think it'll appraise. I'm not sure. I mean, because that's what I had to say. Like, just because this guy said that, oh, it's going to appraise, no problem, does that mean it's going to? And really, if I give evidence why it should appraise, that doesn't matter anymore either, because they're going to believe what they believe. They're going to say what they say. They're going to find whatever comps they find. And really, as an agent, I think it upsets them that we even try anymore. And that's just from doing this for almost 19 years. Like, it's one of those situations where they tend to like get, what's the word? Pissy, I guess. I could say that word.
We'll find out.
Yeah, well,
We're looking at Devin to
think
find
we're
out
good.
now
I
if
think
we're
we're
getting
good.
yelled at.
Do you find yourself seeing some of the same appraisers out there, or is
Yes.
it so? I
Depends
guess
on the company. Depends. I mean,
So
you do
perhaps
enough
if-
business, you see a lot of the same appraisers.
Yeah, so I mean, perhaps a part of it is you getting to know some of these appraisers, and whereas you might have one single process just as a default, if you see that Jane Smith is coming out as the appraiser, and you go, yeah, they're not going to take this package. You go, okay, great. I mean, that's I think to your
chooses?
credit that you have the kind of experience not to rattle that appraiser's cage. And
Well, I mean,
that's just where experience comes in, and is really important.
I mean, that and the fact of, sometimes you're trying to help and you realize you're actually annoying them, and all you're trying to do is just represent the client the right way. So it's one of those situations where, I think some people still appreciate it, some people don't. It's the same. I mean, here's the crazy thing too, and Joey can attest to this, is that you talk to some appraisers and they say, oh, it has to have natural light, and it has to have a closet, and it has to be a certain dimension to be a bedroom.
Bedroom.
Now, there's a deal where if
we
it's
changed it?
if it's 5.5 feet, Joey, and then down, and at the ceiling height, like if it's an angle, they cannot
I've
count
seen
that
crap
anymore.
too. Yeah, dude, I've seen it.
I mean, it's like, what?
Deary me.
It's a bedroom, and it's like, nope,
I
the ceiling's too low now.
It's not a bedroom anymore.
Right.
According to who? According to the new appraisal.
And you have to
guidelines.
take out the 75 feet,
We have-
square feet.
We have new appraisal guidelines. Awesome. More stuff for me to worry about.
Well, yeah, I
Cool.
know. Yeah, I know you're feeling it. Trust me, so do I.
Man.
Who chooses the appraiser, Joey?
Nobody.
The bank.
Nobody.
What do you mean
No,
nobody?
shut up.
Somebody's
It's not
got to
the
do
bank.
it.
It's the bank.
They choose Joey. There's like services, and you go, hey, I need an appraisal at this address, and then they they pick at random. Like in the old days, Joey, when back when you were getting loans underwritten from the Sandbox. I mean, you could be like, yeah, send Joe or Jane Smith over. They got me.
Well, what's crazy though too is
that was in the before times.
What's crazy is though too is that buyers, unless you educate them, like, oh well, we're working with Joey, so it'll be Joey's guy, right? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And so you explain it to them, they're like, well, because then when you say, hey, work with Joey, he's great, and they're like, oh, well, there must be a vested interest for Steve because of whatever, because maybe the things they've heard or assume or whatever, or even read, because everything is true in the tabloids.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all due respect, Steve, you don't want to tell somebody choose him because he's great. Why is he great? And if we can articulate the reason.
No, he's awesome.
Right, but awesome. Why is he awesome? Why do you feel that he's awesome? Is he awesome because he saves you time?
Check him out on.
But you're getting into the weeds here. What I'm saying is, when I refer a lender, when I refer an inspector, when I refer an attorney, right? The reason I do is because I have a business relationship with them. I know them. I understand the value they bring to the table, right? So that's the big thing when it comes to deciding. It's the same reason why you refer me versus another realtor.
No, not quite. I'm going to argue with you right there.
Uh-oh.
Well, no, I'm very serious on this part. The biggest thing whenever I coach somebody is why choose me. All right. Those are the three main words that I focus on. Why should somebody choose my home inspection business? Now, when I refer you, I'm going to switch that around to why choose you. All right. I know what my pain point is. My pain point is real estate agents that care more about their time and their deal and collecting their money than they are for the well-being of my client. All right? That's a big deal to me. And I'm not going to refer anybody who is going to put themselves ahead or their time ahead of my client's time. All right? That's one of the reasons why I refer to you. The next thing is going to be education and intelligence when it comes to stuff, and sincere, I don't know what the right word is, but sincere desire to want to actually help and educate somebody.
I believe I described it yesterday as he has a high level of gives a crapitude about his clients.
Thank you. Say that again.
Easy.
No.
Steve
Seriously,
Davis.
listen to this.
Steve Davis of the Kamar Group
crapituist.
has the highest level of gives a crapitude about his clients of anyone I know in the real estate business.
Now that is a solid attitude. And that is the why. And the same thing. I could say the same thing
I
about
did say
Patrick.
that yesterday, by the way.
And, with his knowledge and his education, Joey with his thoroughness, lack of laziness, and the stubborn ability, that comes into it. And I'm sorry, that's not a criticism. Stubborn ability is actually a good thing.
I like Joey's positive attitude.
You and me
personally.
both, where it comes with it. Speaking of which, positive attitudes, I actually got a phone call from the state of Illinois.
Uh-oh.
And
How's that
What a
positive?
segue.
well, let me explain and I'll share. So it was through the
tea in China.
it was through the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations.
IDFPR is never
It's
happy.
not getting better.
It's getting
is
better.
not
Just
getting
you guys
better.
gotta let me get it. Here. All right. So they called me up because I'm still the registered lobbyist of the Illinois Association of Home Inspectors, and apparently, and Joey, I need more clarification because I want to understand this more. There's something going on with data collection and doing some sort of appraisals with data collection, and they want, and the IDFPR is thinking about including them into the Appraisal Licensing Act, and they wanted to know the home inspector's position on this one. And at first I was like, we wouldn't slip against or for it, when it comes to that one, it doesn't really affect us. But if they were starting to go into property assessments, then that does affect our business, and we don't want that to happen. But what is all that about? What is this data collecting for mortgages?
I mean, I believe what you're talking about is there's things called appraisal waivers, right? And there's different types of appraisal waivers. Some of them are full appraisal waivers. You don't need appraisal whatsoever. Some of them are you can use essentially data that's available to create what's called a desktop appraisal, or you can do a drive-by appraisal. It's just trying to if I'm understanding what you're talking about correctly, limit the appraisers going into the property. For at least that's the way I've understood it to this point.
What does that mean? Limit appraisers going into the property?
Not needing appraisers for transactions.
All
Using
right.
data that's been collected instead from aggregators, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They have all the data in the world, right? So that.
If you've ever had your property appraised, I mean, it's fairly invasive, and I think in general, people are, they're trying to keep whatever privacy they
People out of
possibly
their
can
house.
these days. We've got there's so little there's so little private area left in our lives and in our world that the little bit that people can keep their hands on, they get a little bit more territorial about it. So, I'm sure from the appraiser's side of things, I mean, on the one hand, they're probably thinking, gee, not really great for our ability to continue to make money doing this. But also, there's liability, right? If I'm an appraiser and someone's got a big Rottweiler or anything about a home. I'm sure, well, I know I've heard many stories from you about being in people's homes, and there are mishaps that occur just by virtue of dumb luck. But I can see where there would be some value there. That notwithstanding,
So should these people be licensed?
Now we're collecting more data,
Yeah.
which is maybe not so much in favor of privacy.
I think an appraiser brings a certain type of value to it, to the aspect of like what a property's worth. I also think that as far as how that works, I think appraisers can only use data aspect. They don't really understand the market itself. Is that accurate, Joey, or am I on a limb there?
No, I don't think that they understand the market at all sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
At all. It drives me insane.
Yeah.
All right, so I
think that's by
confused here.
design, honestly.
Wait,
Now
hold
I'm
on.
confused though.
Why
How
are you
does that
confused?
affect the appraisals?
Well,
Because if you don't know that one property is not comparable to another, I mean, for example, if I'm appraising a property in Lincoln Square and I jump up to Rogers Park because I think there's one that is pretty close in the characteristics of it, but it's all the way up in Rogers Park. I mean, those are two different markets.
well, yeah, but that's
not really comparable.
It's two different markets, two different locations, two different. I mean, that's completely. That's a really wide range.
I'm
but
trying
I'm
to use a
going
very
with,
obvious example.
No. And I appreciate that. I think the whole thing, though, when it comes down to appraising aspects, anyway, is I would never say it's a joke, but what I would say is the fact of like. So I think appraisers only go off of comps. They only go off of data, right? Which is important, obviously. But there's more to making sure a property is what the value is, right? It's not just comps that have sold in the area within a certain mile radius, if you will, right? Or a certain time frame, if you will. It's all about what's going on at the markets. It's all about if there are multiple offers coming in, clearly there's multiple people that feel like the value is there. If they're going off the appraisal aspect of like, oh, I appraised it 6 months ago and it appraised for $630,000, and I go in and I say, listen, I think you could sell it at $750. They're gonna be like, wow, that's amazing because the appraiser only said this. Well, the appraiser also. They only go off of factual information from data, so on. So I think, and it could be the opposite too. They saw it at 730, but now the market changed, and now all of a sudden, there's more inventory, and there's, and the rates are a lot lower. So therefore, whatever it is, right? So the fact is, I think multiple ways of figuring out what your property is worth is important. And the fact with an appraisal, that's great. It's worth 500. And we go in there as a professional and say, all right, well, I can sell this at 485. Well, I got it appraised at 500. It's the same thing as when something got reassessed. Like, are you kidding me?
That's a completely different.
Yeah, but but sellers think that.
Well, yeah, and I disabuse them, and buyers as well. I mean, at the end of the day, the appraiser they're acting off of yes, a lot of data. Yes, they have got a lot of guidelines. Yes, it's they can't just go in there and be like, I feel, but there is a lot of feelings. There's a lot of in inferences made. It's not an exact science. I think most people would agree who know anything about it that appraisal is there's a lot of art to it, not just the I added these numbers and I got to this and this is what it's worth. It's they don't have an easy job. And so that's all fair enough, but I've seen some very strange things with appraisals, and you just sort of, unfortunately, the way that it's all designed, you kind of just have to take it and deal with it rather than just be like, well, that appraisal is wrong.
And the other thing that goes along with that appraisal is what happens if that's that one property that had a fire sale. Then the client's screwed. That's not right.
Yeah, or it's not arm's length. It
What
could
do you
be
mean
two
fire
relatives.
Fire sale meaning like they had to sell it because otherwise it's going to go into foreclosure or a short sale or whatever, right? So they're like, or they just had to get rid of it because they're moving to, I don't know, to Ireland, and
Or
they're like, I
divorce,
just need to
and
get
it
rid of
needs
this.
to be done.
Or
So like some kind
or
of
divorce.
distressed property.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, if it's bank owned at that point, I think that would be giving consideration in terms of what its value is as a comp. But I've got one right now where my client is buying a place out in the suburbs, and it's we're closing a couple weeks before the judgment of foreclosure is going to be entered and final. And it's fine. It has no bearing on my client. All of that's going to get sorted out through the payments from the proceeds and all that stuff. But I mean, would a seller in that position be more willing to accept? Are they going to fight for another 10, 15, 20,000? I mean, they're feeling some pretty substantial existential threats to them, and they could end up with zero or a lot less.
But right here, what you three are explaining to me, and Joey, I'm going to want you to, how do you combat the bad appraisers? But let me just get my statement out real quick. The biggest problem I have when I hear stay in your lane, you shouldn't be, worrying about what someone else's job is. And I'm like, just the opposite. I mean, I am so thankful to you, Patrick, that I'm here every week listening to you talk, and especially when I talk to my clients. No, hear me out. When I talk to my clients and then, they're like the gentleman that you just helped, Todd, recently, Steve, he had bad windows that were in there. He's buying a condo building. And I'm like, well, you need to get the condo docs because you need to find out who owns those windows. If you don't own, or what you could do, or how you're going to replace them and replace them.
Probably limited common element.
I wouldn't know
Exactly.
that, though, if it wasn't for this sort of stuff. And knowing what everybody else is going to do makes it just easier for me to coach my clients into coming this stuff. But I don't want to steal this away from Joey. I want him to answer. How do you combat the appraisers that are not taking the market into consideration, like Steve said?
You can't.
You can't?
I don't know, Joey.
No, I mean,
What if
you're,
it's a
you're
VA
married
loan?
to your work, right? If it's a VA loan, it's a lot easier. On any other type of loan, the appraisers are essentially married to their work, right? So you can
So you
send them
can't
comps, you can
challenge
send
them.
them.
You
You
can,
you
but it's
absolutely
really
can.
difficult.
It's a fool's errand. 8% of appeals on FHA and conventional result in a change in value, and that's really only when you can point out an error with square footage, an error with bedroom count, things of that nature.
That's
Something
been
that
my
they actually
experience.
factually
It's
miss.
extremely difficult.
Some will try to tell you otherwise, and I won't speak for their experience because I've had people say, "Well, actually, I've had a lot of success with that." God bless you. I mean, you have a particular skill, and that's amazing. Or you're, well, I won't do this to Devin. Or you're trying to bamboozle me. He's appreciative. He's nodding his head.
He's appreciative.
Or whatever. He's nodding his head. Maybe
So
he's
if you
just saying
guys got a
yes.
call about this data collecting stuff, and we want to, either support or not support our appraisers, how do you feel about this stuff with data collectors instead of licensed appraisers?
I actually am happy with data collectors because normally what they'll do when they do a desk appraisal, as Joey said, or a drive-by appraisal, it literally means
The
that.
value's there.
What's that?
The value's there.
Right. So from a seller point of view or a buyer point of view, I'm happy with that. Now, there are some agents that will tell their client, listen, this will never appraise, so go ahead and buy it because then you're going to get money back and we're going to be able to defend it and we're going to be able to get a cut. Or, I mean, to drop the price. First of all, if you have an agent out there and anyone is listening to this, fire that agent immediately and call me because that's ridiculous. Or hire someone else. I don't care.
That's a really dicey strategy.
But like,
man.
no, there are agents out there that will tell.
You're making my argument.
They will tell their client information to A, try to look good, B, try to convince them to go with them, or C, think they know what they're talking about when they don't.
Yeah, or there's also a D. They're just trying to mislead them, and then all of a sudden it's too late. I'm sorry. There's bad actors out there.
Yep.
All right.
That's not a practice. I would.
It's kind of all the above. Like that.
Could that happen? Sure, I've had it happen. More than a few times. But to utilize that as a strategy is leading someone into a bad spot. Because what if it does appraise out, and now you're like, wait a second, and you're locked in at that point. It's a bad scene. Do not get involved in that gambit unless you're just unless
don't
you're
like your
just
job.
okay with. With putting more money on the line because someone gave you a bad bit of advice.
Yeah, I've gotten real estate agents fired before. Somebody comes to me with a Zoom call afterwards, and I'm telling them, yeah, this new furnace is going to be $4,000 to $5,000. That comes in there.
Don't tell them that.
What do they tell? I want to hear
the real
this.
estate agent said, well, I got a guy that fixes all these things for $50 or $100. But that's what they're doing. They don't care about the client. They care about the client saying yes. And that's it. And that just drove me nuts. And Steve, that person came to you, because I'm like, this is not true. It's your choice. Everything is your choice. What are my options? Give me the education. Let me make a good choice. But it's your choice.
It's always your choice, and that's the thing too. Is like, I mean, even if it's the same reason why you don't answer, hey, so Charlie, if I were to put a drain tile system in, would it be this much or this much? And be like, well, the average of it's between this and this, but I would actually talk with a professional that does these things, right? So
that's not how
you should.
It's not how I work. Sorry.
No, but I'm saying is unless you know the number.
Well, I can't know the number of the contractors that everybody charges.
On average, or what I've heard, ballpark is this. It's the same reason when they're like, well, how much is an inspection? Be like, well, you have a 2.2. Probably it's between $300 to $500. I don't know. You have to talk to the inspector.
I mean, to talk.
It's. Do you know what I'm saying though?
I do.
Like so if you were to say,
let me respond to that real quick.
Yeah.
There's a software out there that a lot of smaller contractors use called HomeWise. And I know that they use it. I know it's pretty accurate that comes out there. You're going to have bigger companies that are going to charge a lot more, true. All right. But if I educate my client and I can give them this is what HomeWise says, I think that's helpful.
Sure. Absolutely.
And if it's work that is, off into some point in the future, I mean, you told me it was going to be 5,000 and then that was 5 years ago. It's like, well, it was 5 years ago. I mean, so, it's fine. It's fine to have sort of a rough estimate, a rough figure in your mind at that point. I mean, honestly, I think as easy as it might be to tell a client, oh yeah, I got a guy that'll sort that out for $50, $100, $200, whatever it is. I think it's a better approach, and I think it's just as easy to say, look, the inspector told you it's got a 20-year-old furnace. Almost any property you buy out there is going to have a furnace that is 15, 20, 25 years old. Once in a while, once in a blue moon, I see one that is a lot newer, and it's not new construction. And I usually point that out to my clients, like, hey, something you probably didn't consider about the value of this home is that the furnace was replaced 3 years ago, and that is something that depending on how long you own the property, but as I'm led to believe by Joey Matthews, the VA loan nerd on all socials, that the average homeowner is in their home like 5 to 7 years.
Depends. It depends. It's changed.
It depends, but I mean, okay.
I'm
average.
Do you know why it's changed?
Ballpark.
Do you want some education there, my friend?
Well, let me finish my point. Then
okay.
Please do. I know you were a researcher. That's a callback to last week. So, the point is, I like to point that out to my client that if they don't necessarily perceive of a newer furnace, AC, roof, whatever it is, as being value that they're getting that most people don't. I want to make sure they understand that, and likewise, and to kind of butt on my point, it's like, yeah, it's a 20-year-old furnace, but 90% of the properties out there have a 20-year-old furnace. No one is replacing mechanicals to get it ready for sale, because mechanicals don't add value, even though they do. I mean, maybe you can sell it.
Yeah,
maybe
you got some grunting over there.
Maybe Steve Davis, the realtor with the highest level of give a crapitude that I know, can sell a home for hire because it's got a newer furnace or AC. But most people really want to see that it's got like one of those like nozzle things that they have in like the back of restaurants, and they go, oh man, I'm gonna really be able to wash that living heck out of my dishes, even though those are like $200-300. But I don't know. Let's go,
God.
researcher. Come on.
Commercial. So for commercial dishwashers, they're not $200 or $300. Just saying.
No, he's talking about
the
the faucet.
nozzle.
Yeah, but he's
for
talking about the powerful one.
No, he's
That's
talking
what he was
about
saying.
the spring-loaded thing that looks pretty.
Those are weak. Anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
You don't know that.
Yeah, well, it depends on the water pressure, but sure. All right, so here's the deal with. It's interesting you bring that up though, because the whole thing with furnaces and compressors and the higher end stuff, the client that is buying or selling needs to know how that works anyway, because especially buyers. Like, so if you're buying a condo, you need to know 5 things you need to ask about those 5 things, 5 major things.
Get your pencils and paper ready.
If you're buying
Pencils.
a single family home, you need to know about 4 things that are major, right? So therefore, the fact of these things that are what you mentioned about 90% of homes, that's interesting, because I've actually found that that's what it was. But I've found that a lot of people are having newer things now when they're selling, which is interesting. And I've even had some sellers like, listen, this is going to die on us. What do you think we should do? Well, you can do a home warranty. You can put a new one in. You can do this. You can do that. Listen, if we put the property in the market for $505, let's put it on for $515, and we'll give you a new, furnace, and it's $5,000. Like you're making an extra $5,000. You want to do it that way, or you just want to sell it as is? So you give them options, right? But when you do have that, it actually brings a lot of value to the property. And as you know, as the inspector and as the attorney on your client, well, they're buying a property and they're like, well, this is old, and be like, well, I understand it's old, but here's the deal. Like you said, you're buying a property. This is welcome to homeownership. How old is it? How often did it get taken care of? Did it get maintained? This, that, whatever, right? Did you get a home warranty? Maybe that's an option. All these different things that you can do.
Yeah.
And that goes back to educating your client as far as that goes too.
Yeah, and all those things. And I think, Steve, you and I are kind of saying something similar, which is that, what does it take? An extra 2 to 5, maybe 10 minutes to kind of go through that little bit of education with the client, as opposed to going, it's not a big deal, $20, whatever. And, trust me, most of our clients are smart enough to realize it's like, that don't sound right. Because no one has ever said, $20 is going to sort your furnace problem out. So they know that you're BSing them, but they may just not have that much information to challenge you on it. And maybe you get away with it most of the time if you're one of those people that wants to just sort of brush people off.
If your
I just
realtor
can't help
brushes
myself.
you off and says, don't worry about it, fire that person, because that's ridiculous. Because guess what?
There's some
That's
things not to worry about.
Really, very little. When it comes to buying a house, a condo,
It's a big decision.
it's a big decision. You should know
It's a lot of money.
everything.
You're putting your family in there. It's a very important. It's very emotional. There's a lot of big things that happen.
Hence
to
the
this stuff.
fact of why.
And whether I agree with somebody's decision or
Right.
not, it's not my decision. It's
But
theirs.
hence the fact of why you do you offer a Zoom of all things the next day or the day after when they do an inspection. I think that's amazing. That's something that nobody has ever done.
Well, the reason is because communication in such a short period of time for a home inspection is difficult.
Absolutely,
but
100%.
But you guys all do the same thing.
What's that?
You know?
I mean,
What do we do?
Real quick. I mean, like cracked concrete, right? If it's just got like a stress crack, I will say someone that's not a big deal, because
There's a difference.
my
you have
friend Charlie
experience
told me.
in construction. It's not me. It's
well, as my friend
Yeah.
Charlie told me, his concrete is what was his guaranteed to do what
Crack. Yeah, we guaranteed our work from fire, theft, and it's going to crack.
Right. So, yeah, there are a certain subsection of things that will come up. Like I will see on an inspection report that a service walk is cracked. And if it's just a stress crack, I'll be like, hey man, they put it on there. They're trying to make sure that they're thorough, or that they at least have the appearance of being thorough, but we're not going to get any bang for our buck asking for them to do whatever, even if it's pretty egregiously, that's a trip hazard. Yeah, they're probably still not going to sort that out. So.
And I agree with that, but I also would say, with all things considered, the things you really should be focused on, based on what you're buying, based on what you're looking at, are these things. I can understand why a stress crack may not be like a huge deal.
Is he allowed to say crack?
He is. I want to get to Joey. We're running out of time, and Joey made a video while he was driving, and I want him to give us the synopsis of this thing. Joey, I got hooked on your Facebook or Instagram post. I forgot which one it was, but it had to do where you stole and I shouldn't say steal, where you ended up closing a loan that another, I think it was Navy Federal or something? Navy Fed. Give me this quick scoop on that. We only got a minute or two.
Long story short, Navy Fed put in a condo. And for whatever reason, they couldn't find the condo in the web loan guarantee portal, so they submitted it. The condo got denied, right, by the new docs that they put in, and they put it in, thankfully, under a different name. But if they had just gone to the loan guarantee portal and looked for the condo itself, it was already approved with conditions. So I was able to just take a snapshot of that and close it. Stupid, lazy, freaking people do lazy, stupid things.
Boom. And that's the problem in our profession all across the board.
Joey, 15 seconds left. Tell us how you feel about Veterans United.
I think Devin would have problems with that.
That's
he would
hilarious.
be sweary.
Yeah, that is hilarious. Let's start closing everything out. Joey, give us your contact information again, please.
630-235-2405. The VA loan nerd on everything.
Well, that was nice and short and sweet. But I will say, though, when knowledge is power, it's one of my favorite sayings. And Joey, you're very knowledgeable, and I just want to thank you for everything that you shared with me. Steve?
Sure. 312-513-6314. You can find me on Instagram at I'm Steve Davis.
Sounds good. And same thing. And something else that you're talking about, because people are buying houses without real estate agents, and I want to talk about this next week. And they're just making a lot of mistakes. And I think we're going to talk where you're going to get into a little bit of private consulting if they need it. And Patrick, please.
Find me and my review of Portillo's brand new breakfast offering. Go check me out on the Sun Times or WBEZ's Instagram. I'm one of the reels they posted yesterday. Man, am I professional.
That you are. My name is Charlie Belfontaine. I'd like to give special thank you to Devin Tingle for making everything work so smoothly for us. And again, if you have any questions, please try and reach out to us. My phone number is 630-327-2700. That's my cell. Whoops.